Hi, and this is a short screencast for Independent Colleges Dublin for CIMA E1 for November 2014. And in this particular screencast, we're going to look at codes of ethics and how they assist companies in a general sense. Now, I'll draw your attention to question 4, May 2010, Part C, or if you're using the BPP study exam kit, question 19 on page 70, again, Part C. Okay, so if we look at the requirement here, we're just really asked to establish how a code of ethics could limit future incidences of unethical behavior. And you'll see I referred to copy or mnemonic on the ethical code, the CIMA code, which you could use within this question, albeit it's not specifically about the elements of confidentiality and integrity, etc. It's more to do with how a code helps rather than the integral parts of a code. So if we look at the scenario, I've sort of covered this in 1 or 2 other screencasts, but essentially what we're talking about is a company that has some issues in relation to past trading. They're looking to introduce more efficient systems, perhaps BPR, process maps, etc. And then down at this bottom paragraph here, they talk about some issues under the previous regime, including the misappropriation of funds and indeed some what we would call unethical practices. So this would be the typical way I would suspect that your E1 examiner would introduce ethics as a sort of a part of another question. Okay, so if we look at the answer, bear in mind that what we're required to do here is to outline how the code, whether or not it's the CIMA code or another code, would assist a company. And in summary, I think what we're saying here is that any sort of code of ethics, whether it's CIMA or otherwise, really provides some sort of guideline or indeed a benchmark for behavior, and that enables a company to then monitor behavior, or indeed for an individual to monitor their own behavior against the set code. Now, in this particular case with W Company, what they start off with is a fairly sort of general paragraph along the lines of, obviously, if there is unethical conduct, unethical behavior, that's going to affect the way an organization operates, and indeed it potentially affects its future. So this is an important area. Next point that they make here is that certainly professional bodies, including CIMA, have their own codes which deal with unprofessional conduct and unethical behavior. No need necessarily to list out the points within the code on that mnemonic copy. You could do, if you can do it quickly. They just want a reference to the idea that many bodies have codes, and that therefore codes are important in a broad sense. The bones of the answer here really starts in this paragraph, and really what they're saying is that future incidences could be limited because of a variety of factors. Now you'll note that the marks for the particular requirement are 5, so broadly speaking you've got about 5 points here to make. Okay, so the first point that they make is just this idea of disciplinary action. In other words, by having a code of ethics, you're going to have a set standard of indeed behavior, and therefore punishments associated with being seen to be undertaking any sort of behavior that's outside of those standards. So that's the first thing that enables a company to do, to have a way of dealing with behavior that's outside a standard. Next point is just really in terms of sort of expectations, both for management and indeed for staff as well. If you imagine that if you have a sort of a standard set of behaviors, then really what you're getting there is some guidance for employees. They can refer to that standard to know how to act in a particular situation, or where they have a dilemma, perhaps. Next point. Really what we have here is this idea of role model. In other words, that in effect the code gives senior management a guideline, and they certainly need to demonstrate commitment to it if they want their employees to be acting or abiding by it. Okay. Next point here, just this idea of involvement, and really what we see is that if we involve employees in the development of some sort of set of standards or indeed a code, really what we're doing is creating a sort of a common denominator or indeed a consensus of what is acceptable. It may well be that employees aren't involved, but this is just making the point that a code, if agreed upon, would create that consensus of what good behavior is and indeed what bad behavior is. Okay. Next point is just in relation to training, and really, this would perhaps be related to the induction process, and it will provide a guide for areas to be reinforced at that training stage, and indeed at any sort of induction process. Next point is in relation to publication, i.e. publication of a given code, and that's got to be good for the sort of image of the business and indeed the reputation of the business. Certainly you may see some codes published on a company's website. Individuals will be able to refer to that from time to time, and so perhaps would people who are dealing with the company, external stakeholders, perhaps even customers, etc. Okay. Next point is just in relation to two-way responsibilities, just this idea that really if an individual is abiding by the code, then really we would expect there to be some sort of compliance from management, and really what we see there is that element of fairness with both sides, as it were, having that guide for compliance. Next point is just in relation to breaches and sort of reporting where there are incidences where the code is being broken in some way, shape or form. Okay, and so what any good code should provide is a way of dealing with a follow-up to particular breaches of the code, and that in itself will lead to reinforcement. Okay, so there's a very quick summary to how a given code of ethics would assist a company. To a large extent, it's about having a standard in place. If there's a standard in place, then people know where they stand, and if they know where they stand, then that will guide their behavior. If issues do occur, then certainly they can refer to the code to be able to be clear on what they need to do. Okay, I hope that's helpful, and good luck with your studies.